Well, hello, Carl and Anthony. Hey, it's the hardcore legend, Mick Foley, saying hello. What a beautiful afternoon it is. Wow, gorgeous May afternoon. There's a view of the river at the Foley compound. Just want to say hello to you guys and let you know that I'm looking forward to listening to you on A to the K, the podcast. I am not yet exposed to much in the world of podcasting, but I think I'm going to start. I hear great things about you guys. I appreciate you being fans. I'm going to go out on a limb and just guess that you guys are big wrestling fans. So I'm going to thank you for your support over the years. Have a nice day.
Hello and welcome once again to A to the K's WrestleTalk podcast. You're here with the man who gravity remembered. It's me, Anthony, and I'm here with I'm here once again with the bastard, Carl.
Hi.
Right, so we've got a good, hopefully fun-filled week of wrestling to go through with everybody. Obviously, we've had we've deliberately waited once again so we could cover the Sunday's pay-per-view of Backlash. So that will be our segment 3 for the week. We have some fun news articles, some worrying news articles, and some useless news articles. Now, obviously, we haven't covered NXT TakeOver in any great detail, so as we talk this week in wrestling, as we get over to NXT, we'll mention some of the pivotal points of TakeOver and sort of cover it in that way, because there are some bits that are relevant to where we're heading in a lot of the plot points for NXT. So, that being said, shall we kick it off, Carl? And shall we talk the news? Because it's always a fun one. It's always a fun one.
Let's do this thing.
Awesome. Right, so it'd help if I weren't sat looking at me SmackDown notes. Biggest one of the week, Carl, or biggest one for us, most concerning one for us, is Paul Heyman has been released from his, I think specifically from his duties backstage, from his creative role. I'm given to understand he's still going to be involved as an on-screen talent, still involved when Brock comes back for SummerSlam, most likely. So you imagine the split was reasonably amicable, but yeah, we've had this massive sort of sudden change. By all accounts, this is down to the fact that Vince McMahon has not been too happy with the direction and the ratings of Raw. So, I mean, have you read much on this, Carl? Have you seen sort of what's going on? Because it's quite speculative, albeit, because no one knows specifically what's gone on. But we all know that Vince McMahon's not been too happy with the ratings, and the ratings have been consistently dropping for Raw.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think Vince is too happy with Paul Heyman in general. I don't think the two have ever really seen eye to eye. They did business together back in like 95, 96, whenever it was, with the whole ECW crossover. And he's obviously brought him back a few times in various different kind of roles. But, you know, word on the street, if we're talking smack, and, you know, Raw Talk or whatever show, you know, you want to chat in there. Apparently Vince isn't the biggest of fans of the Advocate, if you will. So. Oh,
right, okay. Didn't realise that.
Yeah, I think our old buddy Melt said it was a long time coming. He's surprised that Heyman lasted this long, which, you know, was a bit of a surprise to me. But, you know, I don't think there's any kind of no bones about it. Those two haven't really been the best of mates, but they've always respected each other. But I think
I think there is a little bit of respect there still, because to acknowledge that Brock Lesnar still needs him. I don't know whether it's an insistence on Brock's part, but he definitely needs the mouthpiece, and it sounds like that is still going to be the case, because they have specifically said that he's going to continue with his on-screen role.
You know, what tickled me about that is I think in the actual press release from WWE, it said Paul Heyman's going to focus on his in-ring career. I was like, oh, okay.
If he comes out to Raw jacked up to fuck, I'm going to be so impressed.
I can't wait to see Paul Heyman versus Otis. That is a match we all want to see.
I mean, that's WrestleMania worthy right there. And Otis will have the title by then, so fucking why not?
Well, exactly, yeah. Why the hell not? Yeah, I don't know why. I just got a little bit of a tickle out of me, though.
No, I find it quite interesting, really, that in the space of a year, I could be wrong, give or take, but in the space of a year, Vince McMahon has both hired and fired both the former owner of ECW and the former owner of WCW.
Yep.
It's like, you know, taking the companies from them in the first fucking place wasn't enough. Firing them once wasn't enough. Let's go for twice. Let's fire them again.
You've got to wonder, haven't you, how much of just an ego trip it is for him again to be like, I may be, you know, God knows how old I am, but I can still fire my old competition if I want.
I think that honestly, it might be the age kicking in. He might be a bit senile now. He might have forgot he rehired him and insisted that he get out. I don't know.
Exactly. You might think it's literally back at the evasion angle, and he's only just, they've only just gone under. So he's first time he's fired them in his eyes.
Crazy stuff. Now, before I move on to the concerns we have, they've basically, because of the current situation and because of all these budget cuts and so on, they're having one creative team for both shows now. Or I say both. I'm not sure about NXT, but certainly Pritchard, who's currently dealing with SmackDown, is now going to be taking over the creative of Raw as well. Now, as our resident wrestling expert, Carl, how do you feel about Pritchard? Because I wouldn't be qualified enough to say. I can mention what I currently see in SmackDown, and SmackDown probably is the main show that pisses me off at the moment. So I'm not overly thrilled with him. But looking back, how do you feel he is on the creative direction? Do you think it's going to be damaging to Raw?
Oh, 100%. We are fucked, for lack of a better expression, because simply Pritchard, like, your John Laurinaitis, like your other kind of guys are just yes men for Vince. The Pritchard
Probably
brothers have been
why he's lasted so long.
Well, exactly. He's one of the corporate stooges, and forever. It's like Pritchard, Dunn, Patterson. These are the guys who are always just there to kiss Vince's ass, and Pritchard having control of both shows now is basically just means that there's going to be no one to fight back against Vince. So whatever crazy fucking idea he has, we're going to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll mention now that we've been talking about this over the weekend, and I think we both agree that there are concerns there now because some of the or a few of the people who Heyman sort of backs or advocates could be in trouble, and these are ones that I've been enjoying, like the highlights of Raw being Drew McIntyre for the most. I know we've had a couple of reservations over his recent stuff, but Drew McIntyre's Heyman guy. We have, I mean, probably not a big problem for you, but Shayna Baszler was a Heyman guy.
Yeah.
And it seems that the stuff that Heyman was pushing was actually the decent stuff. Like, I don't think, from what I understand, I don't think he had anything to do with the Street Profits in terms of their creative direction. So, the things that for us were pulling Raw down are the things that I don't think he was responsible for. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you called him a scapegoat for Vince. But I have this horrible fear that they're going to put the strap onto Bobby.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
We'll talk Backlash in some detail. We know that hasn't happened. Spoilers for anyone listening, but we're going to mention that later in the show anyway. We know that hasn't happened, but the way that it didn't happen would suggest that maybe they're not done with it. And I really, really hope that they don't just take the strap off Drew just because he was a Heyman guy, and Vince maybe in some way in his head will go, it's his fault, he's the champ, he should be carrying the show, and it's not working. I don't know. It's particularly worrying from the top tier point of view, from the world champ point of view. But he's had his hand on a few different things, and it's concerning really that I don't think this is going to do any good for Raw at all.
Definitely not. I think we're going to fall back into the old trap of Vince. He's got his favourites and the guys who he knows and loves, and the big problem for WWE over the last few years is the lack of creating new star power. And you look at your Paul Heyman's, and he's like, he's, as you said, he's right behind Drew, he's right behind Shayna Baszler. I think Apollo Crews was like a Paul Heyman guy.
That would be, I forgot to mention him, but that would be another concern because Apollo, I've been fully behind his run as US champ, and I look forward to seeing how it carries on. He's like this typical underdog story almost for us. Big muscle bound underdog, right? And it'd be a shame if they fuck around with that as well. And I could genuinely see them going, fuck it, put it on Gaza because we like Gaza.
Well, I mean, this is a guy Apollo Crews who, under Bruce Pritchard, was jobbing out to fucking Sheamus with Shorty G.
This is the thing. Yeah, that is a fucking good point. A really good point.
You know what I mean? And then under Heyman, he's become the US champion and being involved in storylines and kind of getting this bit of a push. So if we're going to go back to the whole Bruce Pritchard thing, then it's not looking bright, is it? Let's be fair.
No, it's a solid point that when you look at some of the bookings, that Apollo is a prime example, isn't he? It doesn't read well, and sadly, in this sort of thing, from a creative point of view, they can play favourites. If he doesn't like you for whatever reason, and I'm not saying that's the case, but say he never liked Apollo, and that's why Apollo was getting jobbed out. Chances are he's going to end up getting jobbed out again. So all in all, really quite a concerning week for wrestling, just based on this first one. It's not a good sign. And we all know, I mean, Heyman, he might be a bit Marmite. I'm sure he'd probably be quite annoying as a person. I don't know. But, so he knows the business, and he knows the creative side of things. He knows the direction he should take things. He knows how stories should play out. And it's an incredible loss. and I can't believe they've gone for it, to be honest. From a ratings point
Yeah.
of view, I mean, the ratings were going to drop anyway. We're struggling at the minute. You haven't got any stars because most stars aren't available. We haven't got an audience. It's all very strange, and you can't put it on anyone's shoulders.
Well, that's it. I mean, if you look at Raw specifically, you've just literally lost. Like Brock Lesnar's gone. Becky Lynch has just gone off to have a baby.
Yep.
AJ Styles has now moved to SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what star power is there? Do you know what I mean? Don't know.
And that's funny because Vince almost was coming out with that initially, like, he understands the ratings drop and he didn't blame COVID-19. It's because we've got to build new stars. It was almost like he understood what was going on, but then has like gone, now it's been 3 weeks, I'm sick of this. It's like, I don't know.
100%.
Crazy stuff. Well, while we're mentioning Heyman, the next one I've got is there's a suggestion, and I'll say suggestion because this hasn't been 100% from the horse's mouth, as it were, but the suggestion is that AJ Styles actually moved to SmackDown due to his anger towards Paul Heyman, and the suggestion is that he felt that Paul should have fought for the Good Brothers, as they were, as the remaining members of the OC, Gallows and Anderson, when they were released, or when there was the suggestion of the release, that he feels that Heyman should have fought for them more because he knew the potential he had, and that has been cited as his anger towards Heyman, and obviously Heyman being the one in creative control of Raw at the time, has been cited as the large reason as to why he moved over to SmackDown. What do you make of that? Because it was a bit of an odd choice because, like you say, in terms of the star power on Raw, they could have done without losing him, really. And I loved seeing him back on SmackDown. I think that was probably where he shone the most. But do you think he's had enough pull to go, no, I'm not working for that man? Or?
I mean, yeah, Vince is a huge fan of AJ Styles, so you can see, very firmly that if AJ wanted to move to SmackDown, then you can see that being the case. But I think it's laughable for AJ to blame Paul Heyman for Gallows and Anderson's departure. Like it or not, it's AJ's fault to a degree. He convinced them to come there. They were big names in Japan and on the Indies, and WWE doesn't give a fuck about tag team wrestling, doesn't really care about these guys who were big in other promotions because they weren't made there. So AJ got them to gamble and come to WWE, and ultimately he's got to take the brunt of the blame for it. It's one of them. You can't blame Heyman.
And at the end of the day, like, whether AJ wants to see it or not, like, the best run they had was playing his lackeys. And that's all they were. They were never shining with AJ, but that was the best run they had, because before that they were doing them stupid comical gimmicks where they were playing doctors and stuff, and they never really sold well as a tag team anyway, as a dominant tag team. And like you say, WWE have not historically got a good run with tag teams, but the best sort of time they had in WWE was getting involved in like WrestleMania matches because of AJ. They never really had a good run on their own anyway. So I think you're right. I think some of the blame has to land on his shoulders as well. Right, so a potentially quite a devastating one here, Carl. And again, spoilers for Backlash. Apparently, Edge, following the match with Randy, following the greatest wrestler match ever. Obviously, when you're going to be in the greatest wrestler match ever, you're going to have to put yourself through it. And sadly, the reports following Backlash is that he has been injured and could potentially be out for 8 months, or up to 8 months. It was looking at the tricep tear is what they've cited as the injury sustained on his right arm. So sadly, this probably wasn't where they wanted to go with him. I'm sure they were going to put him up against somebody else at some point, or have Edge v Randy number 3. I don't know, but
I mean, I think they were definitely going to go for the third. You had Edge win the first, you had Orton win the second, so they would have done the payoff match. But this for me was really upsetting. Not so much because it happened in the match, is it happened during the reshoot. So because we don't have the live crowd, and they have the ability to refilm things if they want, and so on and so forth. Apparently Edge made it through the bulk of the first take of that match really, really well. And then when they wanted to reshoot some of the stuff, I believe, from looking at it, it was when he took the RKO off the turnbuckle. Either the second or third take of that, it was when his right arm went under him and he ended up tearing that muscle. So for me, it's just such a shame, like that. It's not Edge's fault. He's had to do a reshoot for no reason, and fucking hell, 9 years or however long it's been, him on the shelf and never been able to wrestle again to come back and potentially see 4 to 8 months on the sidelines again. It's just devastating.
Oh yeah, and hopefully it doesn't ruin the momentum. And I do hope we see him back. I mean, he is someone who could have easily retired out by now, and he clearly doesn't want to. And this isn't an injury. This isn't the type of thing that's going to put him out for good. But sadly, it'll put him out for like you say, at least 4 months by all accounts. But I know I've read 8, but you never know with these sort of things in terms of recovery time and that sort of thing. He doesn't want to push himself really. But yeah, devastating news. And again, we'll talk about it when we talk Backlash. But to come off such a good match as well, and it have to go down like that, so we're not going to see him now. Potentially, I mean, he could probably still promo, maybe, I don't know. I
saw as well another little side note on this from Meltzer. Who seemed to allude to the fact that it happened not. So he basically was alluding to the fact that it's the kind of injury that isn't associated with wrestling; it's associated with performers who are on steroids.
Right.
So quite big kind of accusations. Although he never came out and bluntly said it, you could very clearly see that's what he was alluding to. He made reference to a similar injury that The Rock suffered a while ago. So I thought that was an interesting one because obviously Edge he's a big guy and stuff, but you'd never
he's quite
down as
he's not like your, for lack of a less technical term, he's not like your fatty muscle that you tend to get with steroids, though, is he? I would have looking at him, he seems quite sort of not slender. It's not the right word, but you know what I mean. He doesn't seem that the sort of it's not like he's walking around like Ryback. You know what I mean? And I'm not suggesting Ryback was on steroids, but I mean like that sort of massive, where you go, okay, possibly. He doesn't have that sort of look to him, so I'd be quite surprised to find that out. But I don't know enough about the sports world or the steroid world for that matter. So, could be, who knows? But as we typically know with Meltzer, could be true, could not be.
Whatever's going to get him them clicks.
That's it. All about the clicks. And while we're talking about this, feels really deliberate, a proper segue these nights, haven't it? While we're talking about the Edge Orton match, by all accounts, one of my other news articles here, Carl, and I like to say by all accounts a lot for those listening, WWE have piped in crowd noise for the greatest wrestling match ever. Not a massive deal, but a strange choice. Like they were so set on making this the greatest wrestling match ever that they had to bring in additional noise because, I'm guessing they came over the tannoy a few hundred times and said, be louder. And they just went. So they thought, fuck it, we'll outsource. A very strange choice. I mean, we've got audiences again now. We've had matches in complete fucking silence and it's not been a problem. WrestleMania didn't have an audience at all. We've just got this performance center talent in the audience now. And it wasn't good enough, not for the greatest wrestling match ever, Carl. So we piped in some audience noise. How do you feel about that?
This felt hella weird for me. So, ahead of the match, Saxton, I think it was, was like, we're so committed to making sure this is the best match ever. We're going to amplify your experience. We're going to, basically, it's a Kevin Dunn wet dream. What they did was they piped in a shitload of fucking crowd noise from, God knows where. And then also they had about 87 different camera cuts per 30. Like, there was one thing I saw on Reddit of a superplex that took place in that match. And I think it had 10 camera cuts in the time it took to do a superplex.
Just as the fallen.
Yeah, like literally, oh my god, like that. Yeah. This is a Kevin Dunn wet dream, is what they did.
Some absolutely baffling shit. This to me, this isn't a far stretch from canned laughter. I'm waiting for the Street Profits to be out doing a promo with the Viking Raiders, and you just hear that fucking typical canned laughter from a sitcom. That's what I'm waiting for.
I mean, fucking hell, if there's going to be laughter anywhere in them segments, it's going to be from a can.
That's right. Oh yeah, you don't like the Viking Raiders Street Profits connection there.
I mean, what's not to love?
The old Profit Raiders.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll move on. So while we're talking about Randy Orton, it still works. Apparently, Randy has tweeted quite recently. I don't know the person he was tweeting, to be honest. It's not someone who's on my radar. But it was a Wade Keller. Now, apparently, they've got a blue tick, so they must be famous.
Oh, yeah, Wade Keller. He's got his own radio show and stuff, I think.
So Wade Keller asked, any flat earthers amongst my followers? And Randy responded by tagging AJ Styles. So I was intrigued. I looked into it a bit, and it was discussed on After the Bell with Corey Graves. For those who are not familiar, it's some hokey little podcast about wrestling, and he's discussed it that he's adamant, And AJ has denied this, by the way, but he is adamant that AJ is a flat earther, and he believes that the Earth is not a sphere as we believe it to be. So a very odd one, but one that I couldn't not mention because it's so sort of strange. And in case you're wondering, AJ's denied it in the sense of saying that he's not a flat earther, but he thinks some of the points they raise are interesting. So in that in itself is ludicrous. But, not to take a really hard stance on this flat earthers, but it's a load of bollocks. But how do you feel about this one, about the potential of AJ Styles being someone who believes that the Earth is just...
I mean, you can see it, can't you? You can you can imagine AJ being the kind of guy to have those beliefs, but I don't know. Orton is a notorious troll, be it on Twitter, be it wherever.
I love it.
He's a troll, and you've got to love him for it. You've had the whole spat between him and Tommaso Ciampa as well over the last couple of weeks, basically saying about wrestling school and learning how to slap your leg and all this kind of shit.
I saw some of that on because there was. I don't quite know the argument because I didn't follow it too much, but I know there was a big debate over slapping the leg. One of the mentions was the super kick. There was a debate. I don't know why, but I found myself watching this sort of debate over Twitter as to whether you meant to slap the standing leg or the kicking leg, purely based on the super kick. And then there's just a series of different clips of Shawn Michaels slapping the kicking leg. So it's like, well, clearly that one then.
Yeah, I mean, from my short tenure in the wrestling world, I believe it was I think the way I was always taught was to go with the leg you were using. So I mean, fuck it. Shawn
That's
Michaels
the one in. What it makes, if you look at Shawn Michaels, you don't pick up on it until someone's pointed it out and you're looking for it. You don't pick up on it because the leg in motion is the one he's slapping. If he was to slap the standing leg, that'd look really obvious to me. But I don't know. Such a strange thing. Anyway, a slight digression, but I found that intriguing.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think Orton is a legend, and he's a classic troll, and who knows?
To be honest, he clearly has a bit of banter with AJ because he said he basically enjoys winding him up, as it were. Not I'm paraphrasing because I'm British and I'm using the term winding him up, but it seems he apparently AJ sort of bites to this one quite well, so he likes to do it, which is why he's tagged him. So speaking of AJ Styles, can
I just say your segues are on point.
I know it's just so organic. It's it's probably because they all mention AJ Styles, to be honest with you. So last week we mentioned about CM Punk taking a stance on Black Lives Matter. I'm not going to harp on that particular point again. But the point, one of the points he made on that was that basically it's essentially saying that the fact that AJ Styles has said nothing tells you what side of the fence he's on. And AJ has basically he's come back in response to this. And I'm not going to sort of, he's entitled to his own opinion, so I'm not going to try and criticize or harp on too much. But essentially, he come back on the actual point being made, saying that he's not offering his side on his side of the fence on the matter, because from his perspective, he is there to provide entertainment and a distraction from what's going on in the world, and essentially didn't think it was his place to sort of get involved on that sort of thing. And whilst he might have an opinion on it and he might support it in whatever way he chooses to, doing it through the sort of moniker of AJ Styles on Twitter as the wrestler, he chose not to do. Do you know what I mean? Which, again, entirely his choice. However, his response to the fact that CM Punk made those comments was simply that, well, I don't respect him anyway, which I thought was interesting. So now, whether you like Punk or not, he's had a significant impact on the biz. So how do you feel about the fact that there seems to be a little bit of animosity between the two, and the fact that AJ does not seem to respect Punk?
I think I said last week, Punk is really clutching at straws now to make himself relevant.
Yes, I totally agree. He's not in the public eye anymore. No one's interested in his UFC career, and apparently he's not coming back to WWE anytime soon properly. So
wait a minute, he had a UFC career?
Well, probably I would say ever so slightly more than you and I have. But that being said, not much more.
Duke Rufus a significant amount of money to train him to get his ass kicked repeatedly and not know a single thing about fighting. But anyway, there was a point in time when CM Punk was white hot in this business. We all loved it. We loved the breaking the fourth wall, that whole promo and stuff like that. Arguably, everything after that pipe bomb was a load of shite. the feud with Kevin Nash, and you know what I mean. Like there was a point where it was him and Cena, Money in the Bank. He was white hot. He did all this. Like he was probably the top dog in the biz.
That was the feud. That was the one right there. That him and Cena. That was the one that did it.
Yeah, 100%. Right, and then he got given the ball and. He dropped it as far as I can say. You can blame creative, you can blame whatever. He didn't live up to all them expectations and hype. He decided to take that ball that he dropped and go home, change his career, become a UFC fighter, got his ass handed to him several times, made a indie appearance under a mask and tried to generate some buzz. That didn't do anything.
Yeah. Thing is, the problem with buzz, right, and this is I think where CM Punk misses the mark. Sorry to jump in, but it's the fact that he made an appearance in a mask and then didn't follow through. Or he interacts controversially with wrestlers but doesn't follow through. He makes his return to WWE on WWE Backstage. It's like he can't be asked actually being a wrestler, but he wants to tease at it for, like you say, for attention, essentially. And it's like, well for me, it's about the follow through. You can't, like, if you'd have done the mask thing and then ultimately started wrestling for Ring of Honor again or something, that would have been cool. It would have been like, that sneaky little, that sort of way in or whatever. But he's not following through with this, so now people don't know what to make of it when he does these things.
That's what kind of baffles me. For someone who can't seem to follow through in anything, he doesn't half spout a lot of follow through, and it is a load of shite, right? He's just trying to get himself in the back in the public eye, back in the spotlight, controversial things, so on and so forth. And you can see why Styles wouldn't respect him, because why would he? Styles has been busting his ass like longer than CM Punk. He's had to go through a shitload of stuff, being like in TNA, not being wanted by WWE and leaving and going to the indies and all this kind of stuff. Like Punk was a little bit of an indie darling in his backyard. He was Ring of Honor, and then it was like,
Punk doesn't like that term, indie darling. I wouldn't go with
that. Okay, what does he like anything?
No.
Is there anything CM Punk likes in life?
No, I don't think so. No.
Maybe that's where he needs to focus his attention. Just find something to like.
The thing is,
I don't know.
It's a strange one, really, with him, because I was actually on board with him. Like when he left the company, a lot of his issues I totally understood. I was there with him. I was like, yeah, they have took the piss. He had, there was some genuine issue there from when you listen to him on Colt Cabana's podcast, and he was trying to wrestle with the staph infection. The medical team weren't great, and so on. You go, these are genuine problems. WWE very callously, I think, sacked him on the day of his wedding. WWE have not been known to be great with people in the past, and I was there. I was like, yeah, fair enough. A lot of his gripes are genuine, but then how long's he been gone now? Like
too long.
Yeah, it's been a number of years, a long time, really. And he's still sort of bitching, and I think that's the problem. Like Moxley or Dean Ambrose, as he was, he left with very similar complaints, very similar issues creatively, and so on like that. Is he still stood there bitching about it now?
Nope.
No, just cracking on. And I think that's where I'm starting to lose a bit of sort of respect, almost, because I'm like, well, other people are just carrying on. They're not still so bitter about it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. For me, he needs to find different avenues to be relevant, and going after people like AJ Styles on Twitter, or it's just petty and it's childish. He do anything, so he just needs to get over himself. And I can completely see why AJ Styles would come out and say, "Well, I don't respect the guy," because why would you? When someone's taking the fucking flame war to Twitter over something that you don't really know anything about.
And this is the thing, and some people might go, well, he was making a point about the Black Lives Matter movement, but really behind the fact is, if it hadn't have been a wrestler, he probably wouldn't have said it. It was he's gone for AJ Styles for a reason. Do you know what I mean? There's plenty of celebrities, there's plenty of people out there who haven't responded or haven't done anything or haven't. Well, they've been totally on the other side of the fence as far as Punk's perspective, and he's not gone after them. He's gone after quite a big star in WWE, and like you say, it's an attention thing. It's done to have us talking about it, essentially. To
be fair as well, whether you was in the spotlight as AJ Styles is, or even whether you're a complete nobody, it's so difficult in today's world to share any opinion you may have and not be fucking lynched for it if someone doesn't agree with it. So for me, just not kind of being overtly one way or the other, or kind of speaking out on something, isn't necessarily a bad thing. Regardless of your stature or your status, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. If he doesn't want to comment on it, it's his prerogative.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They've got freedom of speech. It's not an obligation to use it. I do take your point on that. And sadly, in the state of the world at the moment, he's even getting done for that now, isn't it? It's like, well, you said nothing at all. It's like,
Exactly.
what do you say? What do you do?
Exactly.
It's a difficult time. But speaking of AJ Styles, I'm still doing it. I'm going to struggle with the next one, I'll be honest with you. So basically, this isn't so much a news article as a bit of intrigue. Now, AJ has essentially made a comment in some sort of promo or interview in which he has mentioned the fact that he's back on the brand that he built in SmackDown, which, to be fair, yeah, he did a lot for SmackDown. That's probably his biggest run, and he did a lot at that point in time. He was the biggest thing there. And he mentioned about being the guy who'd been buried alive and trying to come back from that, and basically said that he hopes The Undertaker is watching. So the reason I want to mention this one is because that is a bit of a throwaway comment. It's them trying to integrate the fact that he was buried alive, and they seem to be having this PTSD thing with him where he sort of remembers it occasionally and freaks out a little bit. They did it at Money in the Bank and so on. But it doesn't get a massive mention. But the fact that they're still sort of consistently bringing it up, do you think that we are actually going to have something more between AJ and The Undertaker?
I don't know, to be fair. I don't know whether we're going to have much more of The Undertaker at all. Like, is this actually his final? I mean, I'd like to hope it isn't. I'd love to see him retire in front of a crowd. As good as that Boneyard match was, I'd like to hope it's not the end, but I'd like to hope that it's the end of him and AJ Styles. I think it was great for what it was. It was, gritty and like, oh, I'm going to call you Mark, I'm going to call you Alan, and blah, blah, blah. And, all that kind of stuff. And, the payoff, the match itself was fantastic. He doesn't need anything else.
No, I'm totally with you. I think that was a great match. It was a great build. But we both acknowledged that it was a bit odd that he just turned back up on Raw with not. I was like, oh, I was buried, and they kind of dismissed it. They kind of battered it off. But then they're still like bringing it up now, and it's still sort of relevant. Do you think it's going to be development on a character angle for Styles, or do you think it is going to be something more with The Undertaker? Because at this point, I don't even know with WWE. It could go either way.
Do you know what? I hope not. Like when AJ Styles came back and he was no different, he was exactly the same with the OC shirt on and stuff. I was disappointed because they had an opportunity to do something and they didn't do it. So I'd hate to think that they do something now when it's like far too late in the day to.
When they have to essentially remind you what happens to him.
I feel like they should just let bygones be bygones now and just kind of push AJ a completely different direction. Hopefully The Undertaker comes back, and hopefully it's to put someone over. Brock beat him, Roman Reigns has beat him. It's like, who's the next guy? Yeah.
I think a lot of people would love to see the Fiend. I think that would cement the Fiend as the paranormal beast of the industry, as it were.
Yeah, that would be the biggest trophy for him as well, because obviously he's going to avenge a loss to Taker. Which he
exactly, we had that at Mania. Anyway, just a slight tidbit, but it seems he's still talking about the match and talking about The Undertaker. So that it'd be interesting to see what they're building. Anyway, speaking of The Undertaker, he wrestled in the same era as Chris Jericho. And speaking of Chris, I told you I was going to struggle with this one. So Chris Jericho has.
I tried to tee you up. I even said, "Oh, he's beaten Brock Lesnar. He's beaten Roman Reigns." Wink,
damn
wink,
it!
You know what I mean? Damn
it! Didn't see it, Carl. I didn't see it. You did as well. Speaking of Roman Reigns,
there we go.
He's apparently Chris Jericho has gone into a little bit of detail as to essentially why he thinks WWE failed him a little bit. And he's basically saying if Roman Reigns was to be released, he would be sort of top of his wish list for wrestlers that AEW would take on. I mean, it's an interesting one, this, for me, because there is something to Roman. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's not great on the mic. We know that, right? But we've seen like previous things. Like let's look at Jake Hager. Not to be unfair to Jake Hager, look at how badly WWE kind of fucked him up, really, as far as storylines go. And Jericho even made a comment similar to that. Like, how do you fuck up something like a man like Jake Hager having a pop? A very subtle pop, but a pop at WWE, because they totally ruined him with the Jack Swagger thing.
Oh yeah.
So do you think because I personally, as it stands right now, I wouldn't like to see, because Roman Reigns has got such sort of young fan, and no offense to the young fans, but he's got such young fandom who are just like, they love him just because he's Roman Reigns. He could come out and just underperform consistently, and they'd still be like, he's the best because they want the opposite opinion, which, strictly my opinion, I could be wrong on that, but it seems the way. It's just they want to be different. But do you think potentially if AEW were to sign, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if they were to sign him, do you honestly think he actually has the potential to hang in WWE? Because AEW for me seems to be quite a place where you can be as creative for yourself as you like. They certainly seem to be letting people sort of run with their own thing. I'm sure there must be some direction to it, but they're clearly letting them run with their own things and stuff. But all due respect to Roman, I don't think he's that creative a guy.
No,
And
same.
I've seen him try and go off the cuff on the mic, and it doesn't work. So do you think he would be because for me, in the back of my mind, it would be like a very subtle Shield reunion because he'd approach Mox maybe. But do you think that there would actually be potential for him in AEW? Do you think they could do a better job with him than WWE could? Purely hypothetical, because he's not looking for his release or going anywhere. But given that he would be desirable over there,
Yeah. Could AEW do a better job with Reigns than WWE? Absolutely. Could Reigns, be their fucking trailblazer behind what that is? No. Like, Reigns, like, gimmick aside, etc., he just, as you said, he's not the most creative guy. And he's been there for a while. He's got enough pull. He's won that many world championships. He is the fucking successor to Cena, if you want it to be that way. He could be whoever he wants to be, but he's not. And that comes down to me. It's not like him loving this character, Roman Reigns. It's just he hasn't got any idea. He doesn't know anything else. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like he's got everything on it. He's got the look. He's got the build. He is the Booker's wet dream, but he can't speak, and he doesn't care enough. Like I fundamentally believe we're gonna lose Roman Reigns pretty soon in the wrestling world, and we're going to see Joe Anoa'i, the fucking actor, because
do you know what? Like he cameoed in Hobbs and Shaw thanks to The Rock. Weirdly, I saw him in a Netflix original Adam Sandler film the other week.
I saw that as well. He was the guy at the bar, wasn't he?
Just guy at the bar. So I think, and let's be honest, it's probably less risky as an industry to be in. So I imagine he probably would want to go into the acting side. And I'd probably be with you. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more of Joe Anoa'i than we do Roman Reigns. Or, as they like to credit him, Joe, Roman Reigns, Anoa'i.
I mean, yeah, that used to happen with The Rock for a while. Then it just became Dwayne Johnson. But I don't know. I think it's a weird kind of thing for Jericho to say. By all accounts, Roman is very well respected and liked by everybody backstage. Otis came out the other week saying he can't wait for him to come back. Jericho's saying this kind of stuff now. Everyone apparently loves the guy. But for me, and this isn't just me being like a smark or anything like that, he just doesn't have the persona or the charisma to be. If he went to AEW, he wouldn't be anything. And Jack Swagger, Jake Hager, whatever you want to call him, he was absolutely misused in WWE. He was a JR standout. He backed him, and a fellow Oklahoma boy. He had everything the size but he had a bit of a lisp. And WWE were like, okay, well, we're going to play on that. We're going to
with that.
We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to make him fucking Mr. America. You know what I mean? Like, so you can see with the stuff that Jake's been involved in AEW, with the fucking flim flam and stuff like that. He's got charisma. He's got a personality. But
he's got a sense
could you imagine? Could you imagine a fucking Roman Reigns being in a flim flam video? You couldn't, could you? So,
see, this is the problem I've got. Like, and I always, I think we've clarified this a couple of times, but when we're talking about wrestlers, we're talking about the character. As a person, I'm sure he's a really nice guy. He seems to be a really nice guy, and I can understand why he's well respected. And at the end of the day, he's a fella who comes in and does what he's told to do. Like that's what he's about. Do you know what I mean? He's mentioned a couple of times about like following the script and doing what's asked of him. But like you say, it is a charisma thing from a character point of view. And no, you couldn't you couldn't see him like letting loose and doing like the flim flam or having a bit of a joke. I honestly couldn't actually see him being that humorous, in all fairness. Again, nothing against him as a person. I'm sure he's a lovely guy, but I've yet to see any semblance of sense of humor in the character of Roman Reigns. So it makes you wonder whether he's got that sort of comedic ability, which I do weirdly think is a key element to wrestling. I mean, look at Jericho. Jericho can be serious and he's a badass in the wrestling industry, but he's got great comic timing and he can sell sort of any gimmick on that basis.
Do you know what? That is a fantastic point. You look at all the guys who are main event legend status guys. They've been able to do humor, right?
Yeah.
You know, the Stone Cold, fucking Kurt Angle, Triple H. You know, these guys are all like comedic, like brilliance. They've got such good timing, such good kind of awareness about humor.
It's not very mentioned, but a very key element to wrestling, because it's entertainment. It's wrestling entertainment. People go to great lengths to point out that wrestling's fake. Yes, it is, and that's why it becomes an entertainment element. And a part of that entertainment is the comedic side. And I'm not talking the stupid, like, again, no offense to the real life person, but I'm not talking about the stupid shit like Otis where he just gyrates and acts dumb. Like, I'm talking actual humorous segments, like a lot of the stuff DX did. Anytime The Rock cuts a promo, just tearing someone apart, these were all things that's like, yeah, that's how you show personality in some senses, and that is massively what we've been lacking for Roman. And sadly, he could surprise us, but I couldn't see him being different as a person in AEW.
No, definitely not. And I think like you've mentioned this before, and I think it's such a fantastic kind of comparison of Otis and Chris Farley. Like, it is okay, this guy is pretty chunky, and he can be a little bit like quirky and stuff. Yeah, let's just go full in on this. But you look at, like, you know, the stuff that DX did, the skits that he did, you know, stuff like that, which, you know, maybe it wouldn't fly today in today's world, but like, there was stuff that they did which was just so outlandish and off the cuff, and it elicited a reaction. The stuff where every time The Rock had that microphone, no matter who was there with the Hurricane, Jonathan Coachman, like, you know what I mean, like, it could have been nobody all the way up to, like, you know, your main event talent. He would elicit some sort of humorous reaction, and he would just do something that was so funny. And for me, as you've said, that is a fundamental skill to becoming a main event character. I remember Kurt Angle, when he got inducted in the Hall of Fame, he said, "Don't be afraid to be silly and be stupid and be, you know, and make a fool of yourself."
One of my fondest memories of Kurt Angle, and we've mentioned it before, is him having a rap battle with John Cena.
Like, that today,
that is
still
awesome.
Makes me like cry laughing. And it wasn't even just what he said, it was his mannerisms. He does this little dance, and it was just like everything about it was so funny. It was so good.
And that's the thing. And like you say, if he was somebody who, like, didn't want to look silly, that would never have happened. And it's that kind of stuff that it's like, he's another one. He was top of the company at one point. He's a legend in the business, massively over, and he had great comic timing.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it, all the stuff he did on the invasion side of things, when he was sort of following Stone Cold around and that. Again, things you remember. I think you mentioned it a couple of times with the little cowboy hat and stuff, and you remember it all rather fondly.
Yeah,
and again,
100%.
That was him not being afraid to have a bit of humor about it, and it's a key element. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
And sadly, I've never seen Roman do a promo. Not to harp on, but I've never seen Roman do a promo that I haven't been slightly bored with him.
And I think as well, it harbours back to what you said, where he's such a company guy, he'll do whatever's asked of him. And for me, that's not enough. If anything, it's counterproductive. You look at, like, when Austin took his ball and went home, he didn't want to lose to Brock because he cared. He cared about the character he was. He cared about how he's portrayed, how it made sense. Roman will come out and go, "Okay, so what? You want me to get dog food thrown all over me? Cool. Yeah. What? Like, okay, what? Like, he doesn't care about his character. He doesn't care about anything really. He's too much of a yes man for me to actually, like, and again, we're talking about the character. Like, you know, Joe Anoa'i, whatever his reasons are, he may just be like, okay, well, I don't care. Like, I don't want to, you know, go a different direction or anything. I just want to do what the company asks. In which case, okay, cool. But to be that standout, breakout main event star, you've got to fight for your character, and you've got to take it a direction for you.
And these are things that have been cited by, you know, of Roman's own generation. You know, Moxley has cited that, like, he had to fight against Vince McMahon sometimes to not go down a hokey, stupid route. Sometimes he won, sometimes he didn't, but he would fight for his character. You look at the likes of, again, whilst we've not given much credit in his news report so far, you look at the likes of CM Punk, who his breakout moment came from essentially, I don't know, some of it was a work, but some of it was a shoot and so on like that. But that came from him venting some frustrations and developing them as part of the work. You know, these were all things that developed because they loved their character and what they wanted to do with it. And like you say, it's that frustration and that passion, as it were. So there's plenty of examples you can look at where they've gone, had they not have fought for their character development or what they wanted to do with it, then it wouldn't be anywhere near as good. And I think that's probably one of the key problems here.
Yeah, and like you don't always get your way either. Like Jericho didn't want to face Fandango
Exactly.
at Mania, but
And
he did
it ended up being
because-
one of the best matches, as we've mentioned,
Exactly.
on that particular card.
I mean, you can take chicken sit and make a chicken salad, and that's what Jericho does. Whereas Roman Reigns is like,
that's why I never
chicken
eat at Jericho's, to be honest.
Num. I feel like that needs to be like, the old eat at Joe's like thing. It needs to be like, don't eat at Jericho's.
Love it. Well, you're our graphic design guy.
I'm on it.
And to be honest, the more I mention of what you do, I might actually be boxing myself out here. People will be like, what does Anthony do?
Anthony brings all the lols and all the really decent segues. Speaking of which,
my segues have been on point, to be fair. And speaking of Chris Statlander,
that was exactly the segue I was hoping for, hence why I set you up for it.
Thanks. So this is the last one, and a weird one to end on, because I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, but it's not as big a deal as some. But Chris Statlander is apparently going to be out for some time now with a knee injury that has, I believe it's been plaguing her, but she now requires surgery on her knee. So she's going to be out for a few months, which is noteworthy, obviously, because she's a fairly big star in AEW, but especially because the women's roster isn't particularly fleshed out at the moment anyway. So to lose someone when the roster's not all that big, probably not the best thing at this moment in time. But yeah, what do you make of this? Do you think this is going to cause? She's not really involved in any big storylines per se, but do you think this could cause a bit of damage to AEW?
I don't think it'll cause any like major damage, and that's no disrespect to Statlander. I just think that she's always prevalent in the main event scene. She's always in these multi-women matches. She's always around, and she's one of the very few kind of women faces really in the business. Like you've got a lot of heels. You've only really got like Rio, Kushida, and Statlander maybe as like the faces. Everyone else is a heel over there. So I do think it's gonna make that kind of aspect a bit harder. But look, she's not going to be like a massive miss or anything, but obviously I hope she recovers soon and gets back, because she was doing a fantastic job. She was really elevating the game every week.
And to be fair, it's a strange gimmick to have. I'm not going to say it's bad, because I've yet to cast a judgment on that, but it's a very unusual gimmick that she was putting across as best she could, in all fairness to her. So, she's able to work with that, so she could probably work with most anything, really. So, unless you have any others, Carl, that is the ringside report.
I think I may have 7 or 8 others on AJ Styles, but we'll save them for next week.
Okay. I mean, we could do a list segment if you want about random weird facts about AJ Styles.
Let's do it.
Did you know AJ Styles is an anti-vaxxer? He might, guys. I've totally made that up. He might not be. Seems in keeping with flat earthing, doesn't it? Really.
Listen, CM Punk. Listen, right? You said that off the cuff. Don't go to Twitter. Yeah. It's fine.
It wasn't a thing. We made it up.
Okay. I'd say have a drink and calm down, but we know that's not going to be okay. So just
I mean, I believe he's straight edge, isn't he?
Is he? Is he?
I've heard it mentioned. Fun fact for you.
Fun fact, huh?
Right.
Anyway,
so
cheers. This week's episode is brought to you by floriday.co.uk, where you can get all the latest news about Florida, Disney, and Universal Studios, as well as valuable tips and touring plans to get the most out of your Florida holiday. That's floriday.co.uk, the sunshine state of mind.